Marcus Johnson, a 32-year-old software engineer, had been looking forward to this evening for weeks. He and his three closest friends from college, Darius, Jamal, and Andre, were finally reuniting after years of busy schedules keeping them apart. They chose Bella Notte, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, known for its exquisite cuisine and elegant atmosphere. As they entered the dimly lit establishment, the soft sounds of jazz filled the air. The maitre d' greeted them warmly, leading them to a table near the center of the dining room. Marcus couldn't help but notice they were the only black patrons in the restaurant, but he brushed off the observation, eager to catch up with his friends. The four men settled into their seats, the excitement of their reunion evident in their animated conversation. Marcus looked around the table, taking in the familiar faces of his friends. Darius, now a successful attorney, sat to his left, his usually serious demeanor softened by the joy of the occasion. Jamal, a pediatrician with a heart of gold, was seated across from Marcus, his infectious laugh filling the air. And Andre, the group's aspiring entrepreneur, completed the circle, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm as he shared his latest business ideas. As they reminisced about their college days and caught up on each other's lives, Marcus felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Despite the years and miles that had separated them, their bond remained unbreakable. This dinner was more than just a meal. It was a celebration of their enduring friendship and shared experiences as black men navigating the complexities of professional success in America. Their waiter, a middle-aged man named Richard, approached the table with a forced smile. His demeanor seemed cold and distant as he handed out menus, barely making eye contact with the group. Marcus and his friends exchanged glances, sensing something was off, but choosing to focus on their reunion. As they perused the menu, discussing appetizers and wine selections, Richard returned to take their orders. His curt responses and dismissive attitude became increasingly apparent. When Darius asked about wine pairings, Richard's explanation was noticeably brief compared to the detailed recommendations he offered to nearby tables. Marcus tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, convincing himself that perhaps Richard was just having a bad day. He engaged his friends in a discussion about their favorite dishes, determined not to let the waiter's attitude dampen their spirits. However, as the evening progressed, it became increasingly difficult to ignore the disparate treatment they were receiving. The tension at the table grew as the night wore on. Water glasses remained unfilled, and requests for additional bread were met with long delays. Marcus observed Richard's attentive service to other diners, contrasting sharply with the neglect their table received. He watched as Richard cheerfully chatted with a white couple at a nearby table, offering menu suggestions and checking on them frequently. Jamal, always the peacemaker of the group, tried to lighten the mood by sharing a funny story from his residency days. But even his usual charm couldn't fully dispel the growing discomfort. Andre, typically the most outspoken of the four, was uncharacteristically quiet, his jaw clenched as he observed Richard's behavior. As they waited an inordinately long time for their appetizers, Marcus found himself reflecting on similar experiences he'd had in the past. He thought about the subtle, and sometimes not-so-subtle ways racism had manifested in his life. From being followed in stores to receiving skeptical looks when he mentioned his profession. He had hoped that an upscale restaurant in a diverse city would be different, but here they were, facing the same old prejudices. The conversation at the table became more subdued, punctuated by long pauses and meaningful looks. They were all too familiar with this dance, the internal struggle between speaking up and keeping the peace, the weight of representing their entire race in every interaction, the exhaustion of constantly having to prove their worth and belonging. When their appetizers finally arrived, the presentation was sloppy, a far cry from the carefully plated dishes they saw being served to other tables. Darius, ever the diplomat, suggested they give Richard the benefit of the doubt, proposing that perhaps the kitchen was having an off night. But as they tasted their lukewarm and underwhelming starters, it became increasingly difficult to ignore the deliberate nature of their subpar service. The situation reached a boiling point when Andre politely asked Richard about the delay in their main course. Richard's response was both shocking and unmistakably racist. "You people should learn to be patient. This isn't some fast food joint." A hush fell over their table. Marcus felt a surge of anger and disbelief. His friends sat stunned, the joy of their reunion shattered by this blatant display of prejudice. The weight of Richard's words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Time seemed to stand still as the four friends processed what had just happened. Marcus's mind raced, a whirlwind of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. He felt the familiar sting of discrimination, the frustration of being judged based on the color of his skin rather than the content of his character. But mixed with these feelings was a deep-seated anger, not just at Richard, but at a system that allowed such prejudices to persist. Darius, the attorney, was the first to break the silence. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low but firm. "What exactly do you mean by you people?" The tension at the table was palpable as they waited for Richard's response. Richard, seemingly realizing the gravity of his words, stammered for a moment before muttering a half-hearted apology and quickly walking away. His retreat only served to confirm the intentional nature of his earlier behavior. The other diners in the restaurant had fallen quiet, many openly staring at their table. Marcus could feel the weight of their gazes, a mix of curiosity, discomfort, and, from a few, empathy. It was a familiar feeling, being the center of attention for all the wrong reasons, their private pain now a public spectacle. Marcus took a deep breath, steadying himself. He knew this moment called for composure and dignity. Standing up, he calmly asked to speak with the restaurant manager. As they waited, Marcus and his friends discussed how to handle the situation, agreeing that education was more powerful than confrontation. "We can't let this slide," Andre said, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "We have to do something." Jamal nodded in agreement. "But we need to be strategic about this. We're not just representing ourselves here. We're representing our community." Darius, drawing on his legal experience, suggested documenting the incident and considering their options for formal complaints. "We have the right to be treated with respect," he reminded them, "and we have the power to demand it." As they debated their next steps, Marcus found himself thinking about the broader implications of this moment. It wasn't just about one racist waiter or one ruined dinner. It was about the countless similar experiences faced by Black people every day, often suffered in silence. He realized that how they chose to respond could potentially impact not just their evening, but perhaps the experiences of future patrons as well. The manager arrived, visibly concerned. Marcus explained the situation clearly and without accusation, emphasizing the impact of Richard's words and actions. He stressed the importance of treating all customers with respect, regardless of race. "We came here tonight to celebrate our friendship and enjoy a good meal," Marcus said, his voice steady. "Instead, we've been made to feel unwelcome and inferior. This isn't just about poor service, it's about basic human dignity." To the manager's credit, he listened intently, apologizing profusely for the unacceptable behavior. He assured them that such conduct was against everything the restaurant stood for, and promised immediate action. As the manager spoke, Marcus observed the reactions of his friends. Darius nodded approvingly at the manager's words, while Jamal's expression softened slightly. Andre, however, remained skeptical, his arms crossed as he listened. The manager's sincerity seemed genuine, and Marcus felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this painful experience could lead to positive change. He decided to seize the moment, not just for themselves, but for others who might find themselves in similar situations. "We appreciate your apology," Marcus said, "but words alone aren't enough. What concrete steps will you take to ensure this doesn't happen to anyone else?" The manager, to his credit, rose to the challenge. He personally took over their service, ensuring the remainder of their meal was impeccable. He offered the dinner on the house and invited them to return as his personal guests. More importantly, he committed to implementing diversity training for all staff members. "I want to thank you for bringing this to my attention," the manager said. "You've opened my eyes to an issue I clearly needed to address more proactively. I promise you, we will do better." As they finished their meal, now expertly prepared and served, the atmosphere at the table began to shift. The anger and hurt were still there, but they were tempered by a sense of accomplishment. They had faced racism head-on and responded with grace and assertiveness. "You handled that really well, Marcus," Jamal said, a note of admiration in his voice. "You turned a terrible situation into an opportunity for change." Darius nodded in agreement. It's not easy to keep your cool in moments like that, but by staying calm and articulate, you made sure our message was heard. Andre, who had been quiet for much of the interaction with the manager, finally spoke up. I'm proud of us, he said. We didn't let them off the hook, but we also didn't stoop to their level. We showed them what real class looks like. As they left the restaurant, Marcus and his friends felt a mix of emotions, lingering hurt, but also a sense of empowerment. They had faced racism head-on and responded with grace and assertiveness. Their evening had been far from what they'd planned, but it had become something more significant, a testament to their resilience and unity in the face of adversity. In the weeks that followed, Marcus received a letter from the restaurant owner, detailing the steps taken to address the incident. Richard had been terminated, and the restaurant had initiated a comprehensive diversity and inclusion program. The owner invited Marcus and his friends to participate in a focus group to help shape the restaurant's new policies. Encouraged by this response, Marcus decided to share his experience on social media, not to shame the restaurant, but to highlight the importance of speaking up against racism and the positive change that can come from handling such situations with dignity and purpose. His post went viral, sparking a broader conversation about racial bias in the service industry. Marcus found himself fielding interview requests from local news stations and podcasts, using each opportunity to advocate for greater awareness and concrete action against discrimination. The experience also strengthened the bond between Marcus and his friends. They began meeting more regularly, not just to socialize, but to discuss ways they could contribute to positive change in their community. They started a mentorship program for young Black professionals, sharing their experiences and offering guidance on navigating predominantly white spaces. Reflecting on that night months later, Marcus realized that what had started as a painful encounter had become a catalyst for growth and change. It had reminded him of the power of his voice and the importance of using it, not just for himself, but for those who might not have the opportunity to speak up. The dinner at Bellanotte had been far from the reunion they had envisioned, but it had reaffirmed the strength of their friendship and their collective resilience. It stood as a powerful reminder that even in the face of prejudice, unity and dignity could prevail, turning moments of adversity into opportunities for progress. As Marcus continued to advocate for change and support others facing similar challenges, he carried with him the lessons learned that night. He was reminded that the fight against racism was ongoing, but with persistence, courage, and the support of a strong community, positive change was possible. The unexpected encounter at the dinner table had become a defining moment, not just in their lives, but in their commitment to creating a more just and equitable world.